Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Red Hour, a show I do twice a week where I throw a little chaos into Star Trek by reviewing a random episode. And tonight's episode is a bonus episode because I'm basically making up for a couple of times that I missed in the past. And we did one last night too. So today's episode is from the original series, season 3, episode 6, Spock's Brain. And this, of course, is one that a lot of people make fun of, mainly because there's a point in the episode where the character says, um, brain and brain, what is brain? And we'll get to that point, and I'll try to do that quote a little more justice. It also hinges on a bunch of really unrealistic ideas, and I'll get to that point too. When I get to the end of the review, uh, because it's there's just a lot of ridiculousness going on in this episode, and really season 3, is not the best season, uh, and I guess part of the reason why Star Trek got canceled in the first place. Thankfully, it did make a comeback in the movies, and of course, future shows. Um, but now Star Trek is at an all-time low with Kurtzman Trek, and it's probably going to come to an end pretty soon, hopefully. And hopefully, if it gets brought back, it gets brought back with the right people. But enough about that. On with the episode. So the episode begins with a small ship approaching the Enterprise, and the Enterprise is at red alert. And Uhura says that it's unidentified, and they've held it, but there's no response. Suddenly, we see a woman board the ship, and security comes onto the bridge, and she presses a button on her wrist. She has this controller thing and presses a button, and uh, everybody passes out, and the lights go out and stuff. And I see Michelle Fairy Tales is here. Hello. Um, as we begin, and then so she walks up to Spock and places her hand on Spock's head, and that's the end of the teaser. And then we get the theme and music. And I heard last night, I think Admiral Teague called the teaser something else. There's another term for it. I can't remember what he said. Um, and I've heard that term before. Doesn't matter. I'll look it up. Anyway, so so back on the Enterprise, we see she leaves, and the ship uh, is back online. Everybody wakes up all at the same time, and we see this a lot in Star Trek or other TV shows where the whole entire crew passes out, and the whole entire crew wakes up at the same time, which is not how reality works, but whatever. It's science fiction show. It's just a TV show, as Mr. Shatner said on Saturday Night Live. And they look around, and um, Kirk looks around and doesn't see Spock, and is wanting to know where Spock is. And then McCoy calls Kirk on who's on the bridge, and says he needs to get down to sick bay. So he gets down to sick bay, and we see Spock laying on the sick bay bed with like this towel, space towel, on his head, which is like kind of golden and glittery. It's a space towel. And basically, his brain is missing. And his body can function, but he doesn't have a brain. How that works, I don't know, because Kirk thinks he's dead, and McCoy says no, that his body is functioning, but he has no mind. And Kirk wants to prepare Spock so that he can travel with them as they search for this woman, which McCoy rightly points out. How are you going to find her? She could be anywhere. We don't know how. They don't even. I don't think they even say how long they were out for. But McCoy also states that Spock's body can only last this way for 24 hours, and then he's gonna really die. Again, how this is all working, I don't know, but somehow it is. So Kirk asks Scotty to work with McCoy to make it so that Spock can walk around without assistance, or he has some assistance, but not. They're not doing anything. They don't have to carry his body. That is what I'm getting at. So they're searching for this woman, and they're using her ion trail. I guess they figured out that she had an ion engine, not a twin ion engine, like a TIE fighter, just an ion engine, which Kirk says is more developed than their warp travel, which that seems backwards, but whatever. So they're following the trail, and the trail, it's been 15 hours now, and then the trail has now gone cold. And the last known area that the trail was at was this solar system Sigma Dracon. And I wrote that down this time because a lot of times I don't remember the names of the planets and the whatnots. So I want to be more accurate. I need to be. I'm coming here, giving my thoughts and blah blah blah, and I want to be more accurate. And YouTube tells me I should be. So there's three M-class planets in this system, and none of them are capable of interstellar flight. And Chekhov is giving the presentation, basically saying there's one planet which is sort of the equivalent of Earth, like now. There's one planet that is in like an ice age type situation, and then there's another planet that's like Earth, but the 2030s, so 4 years from now. So it's still not capable, and of course we know first contact doesn't happen until 2060s. So yeah, none of them are capable of interstellar flight, but Uhura picks up an energy signature from the planet that's in the ice age, and Kirk is trying to decide, and basically Chekhov tells him the information again, tells him that there's only one area where the planet doesn't is not in an ice age, which is near the equator, and he basically goes off a hunch, and he says that it's a hunch and that if he's wrong, then Spock's gonna die. So they beam down to the planet, and now they detect that there are humanoids on the surface. So on the planet, it's like a icy planet. If you've seen this episode, you know. But if not, it's an icy planet with like snow-covered mountains and stuff. And if there's humans on this planet and they're in like a Stone Age type situation, wouldn't this be a violation of the Prime Directive? But then again, I guess we can, I guess I can talk about that once we get to the end, because I feel like it is, but it isn't. But anyway, Scotty detects 5 people that are, he says they're out there on rocks, and he's basically doing what Spock would be doing in this place. And Kirk even calls him Spock when they first beam down, and then corrects himself. So the 5, it's all 5 of them are male, and they know that Kirk and crew are down there, so they're looking for them, and they have primitive weapons like sticks and stones and clubs and stuff like that. And Kirk tells everybody to spread out and take cover for behind the rocks. And they see these 5 men see Kirk and the landing party, and they start throwing rocks at them. And a security guard uses his phaser to stun one of them, and then they all run away. So the Kirk is talking to this guy, and I guess the universal translator is basically doing a lot of work here. But he's talking about the others. Or the guy says, "You're not one of them. You're not part of the others." He says, "No, he's a man like you. I'm like you." Wants to know about the others, where they're at, who's in charge, and ask about the women. And the guy's confused. He doesn't know what women are. And basically, Chekhov comes around with a tricorder and says that there's a building underground. There's an underground structure right below where we're at. So they find this cave where, and the guy says the others bring pain and delight. And that's about all they get out of him. So they find this cave where there's food, there's weapons, and there's tinder. And they're like basically deducing that this is probably a trap, and probably somebody set this here as a trap for them, for these men, because this is supplies that they don't have. So they call McCoy and tell him to bring Spock and bring him down. Then they find this elevator that takes them down below the surface, and Kirk leaves Chekhov behind with the security forces, which surprisingly enough, none of them die in this episode. Spoiler for a 60-plus-year-old episode. Or, yeah. So he uses his phaser to heat a rock as like sort of a fire, to build fire or to keep them warm. So then this door opens and we see a woman come out, and she's basically talking like a child, or maybe a dumb blonde or whatever. She's asking them where they came from, who she is, and um, Kirk is asking where is Spock's brain. She doesn't know what he's talking about, and says her name is Luma. And McCoy basically said, or no, sorry, they have their communicators open, and all of a sudden they can hear Spock. Spock is talking to them through the communicator. Then we see the lady show up, the lady that stole Spock's brain, that was on the Enterprise, shows up and zaps them. And then they pass. So same as before, they pass out. She uses her bracelet thing. They pass out, and now they've been taken prisoner. And they have these belts on that basically she uses to keep them in line. And we see some other men that are sort of like bodyguards that also have these belts. So that's what brings them pain. And Kirk is confronting her about Spock and Spock's brain. And McCoy, and she again is speaking like a child and doesn't understand what he's saying. McCoy says to Kirk that she may not even know that she came, because he's saying, you came to my ship, you took Spock's brain, and I want to know where you did with it. And McCoy says that she may not even know. She may not even have the memory of doing that. And he says that they talked like children, and then ask about the controller. And then now we get and about his, and says that they deduce that Spock's brain is the controller and is controlling things on this planet. And that's when she says brain. He gets mad and says brain, and brain. What is brain? And I thought the line was just brain, what is brain? It was brain and brain, what is brain? Okay, so it's been a while since I've seen this one. Anyway, yeah, so Spock's brain is in control of things that are going on in this planet. So she zaps them again, except this time with the belt that brings them pain, and they're like on the ground. And we get a quick cut to the Enterprise where Sulu does a log and basically saying he's in charge of the Enterprise while the captain is gone. And it's very quick. I really didn't catch what all he said. Just an update, you know. Then they wake up again, and Scotty deduces that these belts are held together by some kind of magnetic lock. Now, I failed my duty to note if it was some sort of, or some kind of, or if I'm just using the word some sort of, or some kind of. But he says so that's that's a bad thing on me. And so they see their communicators on this table with the tricorders and medical equipment, but those guards are there. So they basically start a fight with the guards and end up beating them and getting their stuff back. Then they contact Spock again, and I wrote down consciousness because this episode could have dealt with what it means to be alive and what it means to have consciousness, and can you transfer it from um, to a machine, and and all of this philosophical stuff that has been talked about in Star Trek before and other science fiction, but they didn't take that opportunity. They left it there hanging there. That's why I wrote that down, because I wanted to sort of talk about that a little bit. And we've seen it in, like in Picard, they changed Picard's switched his consciousness to an android body, and you know another missed opportunity where they didn't talk about like what that means, and they just wanted to get to the big scary grappling hook monster in the sky and the pew pew, uh, because New Trek doesn't go into in-depth conversations like that. Um, and then there was a TNG episode. Ira Graves wanted to transfer his consciousness into Data, and I guess he did succeed, but then it didn't quite work, and basically um, put his consciousness into the computer, the Enterprise computer. But yeah, anyway. Um, so then Spock doesn't trust McCoy to do this surgery, because they want to talk. They want Spock to tell him to guide them to where he's to locate him, and he's debating on whether it even would be possible, because uh, this is like, I guess, brain surgery in the 23rd century or 22nd century, whatever, 23rd century. This type of brain surgery just is not possible, but apparently it is with this society. So he doesn't initially trust McCoy to do it, but then he says he asks how much time they have left, and they say 5 hours and 48 minutes, which would be enough time. So Spock agrees to it and guides them to where he's at, and he's basically beaming a signal to them, which they're picking up on the tricorder. And then he says that there's a red button on her wrist control, that releases the belts. Says if that makes any sense to Kirk, and Kirk says it makes perfect sense. So they find the controller room, and basically it's this little ball with little. Kirk explains it, and I don't remember what he said. Little extensions that come out, and that lady's there again, and she presses the thing on her wrist, and they all fall to the ground, and except for Spock, whose body is there, but his body doesn't receive any pain because his brain is not connected to his body, and he's still alive somehow. And so they use Spock, because Kirk has this control thing that controls Spock's body to make him walk and talk, or not talk, but walk and move and stuff. So he grabs her and presses the button that releases the belt. And she says that he can't do this, that the old controller is finished, and this controller will last them 10,000 years. And then Kirk basically wants her to do the procedure to reinstall his brain, but the woman doesn't know how. She's, again, like, really dumb, And then there's this device basically that she explains is called the teacher, that when she puts on the thing on her head, it gives her the information she needs to do what she has to do, whatever tasks that she has to do. And but it only the but then she loses the knowledge after a few hours. So Kirk, takes the device and puts it on her head and makes her learn all these things, and then takes the device off her head, and now she's like normal. And so but she has learned the knowledge that of how to steal Kirk's phaser, and knows that how to use it, and that it's and Scotty notices that it's set on stun or set on kill. Uh, and they say something about Spock says something about how the knowledge is like predetermined somehow. Um, I was kind of confused about that, but anyway, the so she has the phaser, and then Scotty distracts her for a second, and she kind of throws the phaser out of her hand, and then Kirk grabs it and takes back the phaser, and then but she still refuses to help them. So Kirk turns to McCoy. McCoy says that he can do it, that he could put on the device and use the device to do the surgery. And Spock says that she's an alien, that it may not work properly. And he says, well, it's worth the risk because, first of all, I'm saving your life, and imagine all the knowledge that I could bring back. Even though they said that the knowledge goes away in a few hours. So, it doesn't really make sense. But anyway, he puts on the device, and at first it looks like it's starting to hurt him, and he falls over, and then he looks up, and then he says, a child could do it. A child could do it. So now he's got all the knowledge to do this surgery that apparently a child would know how to do. Kirk tells the lady to, the lady is, I don't think we ever get her name, but she's like all confused and is worried, like, how are we going to survive now without the controller? And he says, you'll learn how to do this, you'll learn how to do that, and we'll teach you. We'll stay behind and teach you for a little while. So this is where I was getting into the Prime Directive violation thing, because and I guess I should wait till the end, because Spock does a quick rundown as to what happened, because obviously at this point you've got questions. So yeah, I'll just wait to the end, and I'll talk about the Prime Directive and some of the other things that I wanted to bring up that aren't really addressed in this episode, but it needs to be brought up. So Kirk tells them that they'll survive and they'll be all right, and that humanity has gone through similar things in the past. Then we get to a point where McCoy is starting to forget his knowledge. Ow. And he's starting to panic. And Kirk tells him to just, he's basically saying just sort of figure it out. Like, use your knowledge and connect connect Spock's vocal cords. That was the priority, so that Spock can help guide him through this process, even though Spock's not a surgeon. So how would he know? I mean, yeah, Spock's a very smart guy, and he's the science officer and he knows a lot, but he doesn't. He's not a medical doctor, so how would he know on a procedure that apparently has never been done before, that to their knowledge? So, so I guess you can see some of the problems with this whole episode. First of all, one being being able to function without a brain, but but he does it and finally works his way out, and then he wakes up and gets up, and and so here's where we get to. Apparently, this is a retrograde civilization that once was more advanced than they are, so more advanced than the Federation, and their planet went into an ice age, and the women were in this area below while the men were above. And he begins to say that a schism occurred between the men and the women, which is why they're separated. But then the episode sort of ends on on a joke where McCoy says, "I shouldn't have done it. I shouldn't have connected his vocal cords." And they all laugh at classic ending, but sets up a lot of questions. Is like, how does this? Well, I was thinking about it at the end of the episode, and I'm like, I have more questions than I have answers because, how does this society work? Because Spock says that it was like thousands of years ago that this ice age happened, and ice ages don't just suddenly come along. They take time. We are technically still in an ice age. And so it makes no sense. They have interstellar flight. They could have left the planet and gone and recolonized somewhere else. They could have planned way ahead, which apparently they did because they have this underground bunker. And even if you had multiple, even if a giant asteroid hit and destroyed the majority of their civilization, and you had multiple volcanoes go off all at the same time, or a nuclear winter. A nuclear winter would probably be the best way to explain it. But if it's a natural occurring ice age, it takes hundreds, thousands of years to happen. So they would have had plenty of time to plan for this. And then how does their society work? Because obviously, if they've been around, if this happened thousands of years ago, as Spock said, and let's assume that they have an average lifespan, an average humanoid lifespan. It's not like, oh, they live 1,000 years. Then they procreate, meaning, if they have a son, do the women have to banish their son to above ground, or and they don't form don't form any bonds, and then like the men, they're basically being raped. They say it's pleasurable, but it's like a weird, forceful relationship just so you can procreate, and that's it. And then I guess if you're born female, you get to stay down there. But they're all dumb as rocks. So they have, I guess, when the civilization first built this machine, I don't, like I said, I have more questions than answers, which is why none of this shit makes sense. Like, uh, it's just poorly written. I wrote down, it's an interesting concept to have like a society running on running being run by a machine which is controlled by a organic brain, and I dare say that there might be another story out there similar to that. Well, there's the Matrix, which um, their societies they are ran by, we're their batteries, basically. So there's that. So interesting concept, poorly executed, and then again, this society would not be able to function and last because you would form like the first group of people would form bonds once they have kids and stuff, and they wouldn't just you wouldn't. What do they again? What do they do? If you have a son, you have to banish your son, and if you don't, they'll like execute you or something. That's the way I'm imagining like what led. I think the story of like what happened to the society would be a more interesting than the actual what we got. Plus, again, I guess it's not a prime directive violation because they're kind of restoring their society. We've seen this before in other episodes where um, the Landru episode, Return of the Archons, the Rat Hour. This show is named after that. Uh, they kind of restored their society after destroying Landru or the machine or whatever. So I guess it's not a violation. Plus, I don't know. It's weird because they have interstellar flight, so they could have left at any time and just gone to one of those other planets in their system or a moon or whatever. Anyway, I gave it a 3 out of 10. That's about all I had to say about it. But Michelle Fairy Tales, what do you say? And what did you think? Spock's Brain, Cat's Paw, and The Way to Eden with the Hippies in Space are my top 3 terrible episodes of TOS. I find them funny in a Mystery Science Theater 3000 way. The Way to Eden among is kind of it's funny in a Mystery Science Theater way, and we get the classic line, "You are not Herbert," and they talk about that stuff. Or is that the way to any with the hippies? Yeah, I always get that one confused with the other one, the apple, because Eden apple. Uh, and then cat's ball. That's just if it's Halloween and I'm like, I want I want my Star Trek fix, but I also want my Halloween fix. It's like, okay, I'm gonna watch Cat's Ball. And there's a couple of episodes of Enterprise where there's like Vulcan zombies, and then there's another one where they have like vampire type. There's a ghost, and there's also TNG, the famous ghost one. But yes, and there's a couple other season 3 TOS episodes that are really cringy, but they do have an element of science fiction and stuff that make it tolerable, I guess. But this one's, again, it's just a lot of. The dumbest thing is not having a brain and being able to functionally still be alive. All right, so I'm going to do the random generator thing. And Michelle, I will not be here Wednesday, but I will be back on Thursday to return to the Red Hour. And as you can see, it's nothing has changed. Press the randomizer button. Oh, generations. Well, I'm not doing movies. So I'm going to have to press it again. Lower Decks. I'm not doing New Trek. Lower Decks. Although Lower Decks is probably one of the better ones. Are you fucking serious? Lower Decks. Again, not doing New Trek. Again, Lower Decks. Are you serious? Are we just doing Lower Decks? Again, Lower Decks. What the hell? Okay. Deep Space Nine. Double check. I've never seen it do that many of the same series before. Deep Space Nine, Prophet and Lace. Season 6, 23. No. Okay, so I will be back. Yeah, 4 Lower Decks in a row. I will be back Thursday, same time, 8 o'clock, for Season 6 of Deep Space Nine, Prophet and Lace. That's a Ferengi episode, and well, I've given my score, but overall I don't mind it. Some people don't like it. I don't mind it, but anyway. So I'll be back. Thanks, Michelle Fairy Tales, for coming out tonight. Thanks for anybody that's lurking, and anybody that watches this in the future. I will later on at 8 o'clock or 10 o'clock. I will be at Brahma Bull, the bullpen. I will just be in the chat. I will not be participating in the audience. But if you're into that, I mean, it's more political, not pop culture. But anyway, I'll see y'all later. And put a comment. You know, what did you think about this episode, and what did you think about the show? What did you think about my thoughts about the society and how it would work?